Take a few deep breaths, relax. And then gradually draw your attention to your breath or another object of meditation. And just observe your breath without being distracted for a couple minutes. And when you see your mind wandering off, recognize that as a distraction. Try to let go of whatever you're thinking about, whatever your mind is attracted to. And then bring your attention back to simply observing the breath. Very still, very clearly, fully alert, observing the breath. And then, as a way to generate a positive motivation, then first visualize oneself surrounded by all sentient beings. So usually we begin by visualizing our Father to our immediate right, our Father of this life. Visualize seated on your immediate right, and then also to your right and behind you, your other male family members, uncles and grandfathers, and male friends, cousins and friends, and so forth. Imagine them all seated to your right and behind you. And then to your left, your mother of this life, then all of your female family and friends, aunts and female cousins and grandmothers and so forth, to your left and behind you. So as you visualize all these, feel how you're interconnected with them, how your life is dependent upon them, how your life depends upon them in various ways, and therefore you're related to one another, you're connected with each other. And then, of course, generate the intention to accomplish not only your own welfare, but also their own their welfare, their well-being, by whatever you do, especially here this morning. And then visualize all the other sentient beings who have been your kind mother and father, friends, relatives from life to life. And will also make every instance of your happiness possible in various ways. So imagine all the other sentient beings seated around you in human form. Reflect how they're all also connected with you. And they're also the same as you, and wishing for happiness and wishing to be free from suffering. So also generate the aspiration to achieve their welfare by whatever you do, especially whatever you do in this session this morning. And then finally, generate or visualize those who you find most antagonistic, whom you're most prone to become angry with, become upset with, who you tend to get irritated with or dislike. So imagine these people seated directly in front of you, at about a few meters distant, facing towards you. Because they're the ones we have to be most cautious of, or be most careful in how we think about, how we relate to. So as you visualize these people you tend to dislike, seated in front of you, facing towards you, then also reflect how they're the same as me in wishing for happiness, and wanting happiness and well-being, and wanting to be free from misery, suffering, and dissatisfaction. And they're the same as other sentient beings in having been my kind mother, father, friend, family member, and so forth from life to life. And how they also make my happiness and enlightenment possible. So in this way, thinking in this way, then try to also generate the aspiration that whatever you do, in general, and especially this morning, in this session, all becomes a cause for their happiness and well-being. And then since this morning's session is on patience, the patience chapter, the Bodhisattva's way of life, which is the opposite. Patience is the antidote to anger. So spend a few minutes especially reflecting on how harmful anger is in your own life, in the lives of other people that you know, or in the world in general, and other circumstances that you know of. Then reflect on how destructive anger is, the wish to harm others. And try to generate the motivation to, as you see, looking at the drawbacks, the defects, the harmfulness of anger, then try to generate the motivation that whatever I do in general, especially here in this session, may it all become causes to reduce and totally eliminate this destructive attitude of anger in myself and in others, and become a cause to increase the causes of well-being and happiness, such as loving kindness and patience and tolerance in the mind of myself and others. So with a positive motivation, then we'll do some preliminary prayers before the actual teaching. So the first is a praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. So the idea is that in order to actually achieve our goals, then we need assistance, we need guidance, and we also need a store of merit. So first we, as a Buddhist class, a Buddhist function, or as we practice Buddhism, then we turn primarily to Shakyamuni Buddha as our guide. Page 73. So if you can open your prayer book, this golden prayer book, to page 73, we'll do the prayers there. Page 73. So usually we visualize Shakyamuni Buddha. So if you like, you can try at the height of your eyebrows, your forehead, about 2 meters distant in front of you. Then visualize an image of Shakyamuni Buddha, about the height of your thumb or the height of your hand. Seated on a golden throne, embellished with jewels, and supported by 8 lions, 8 white lions. So whenever we visualize, the main thing is to feel that the being we're visualizing, in this case Shakyamuni Buddha, is actually present in the space in front of us and is one entity with our own spiritual teachers. So then we can read this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata and knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality. To the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and will also show the path to liberation. The holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community and tending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms in all aspects. With supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual apparition, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of false, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagwan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's Mountain in Vajriya, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagwan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, or path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell on the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error to reach the end point of nirvana, all the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared: Kayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Padesam Gate Bodhiswaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying: well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, and asuras and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Then we'll skip to the mandala offering. Where is it? Maybe we'll skip to page 91. Page 91 at the very bottom. So it says Holiness the Dalai Lama. We'll do the requesting prayer to Holiness the Dalai Lama. Page 91 at the bottom, just below where it says H.H. the Dalai Lama. Noble heart, with all the wisdom of the conqueror, principal embodiment of all the stainless teachings of the conquerors, protector emanated from an ocean of infinite mandalas, to you, kind Guru Nalanda Tenzin Legtsok, I make request. With your strong shoulders of learning and practice, you patiently establish in all directions the stainless banner of the Muni's teachings, especially the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa. I make a request to you, Tupten eyes to view all the vast teachings, supreme gateway to liberation for the fortunate, using skillful means to lovingly subdue. To the illuminating spiritual friends, I make request. May I not arise heresy even for a second about the actions of the glorious Guru. May I regard whatever actions are deemed as pure. With this devotion, may I receive the Guru's blessings in my heart. And then the foundation of all good qualities. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities, and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsara pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the patimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all other migratory beings. Please bless me to see this trained supreme bodhicitta and bear the responsibility of free migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows of great energy. Once I have pacified distractions from all objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream a unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate one, the supreme Vajradeva. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya. As I have become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who showed the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. And all my lives, never separated from perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dhamma. By completing the qualities of this innocent past, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Then turn to page 98. Offer a short mandala. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field being offered. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create in teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create in teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to explain the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. So then we're looking at a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. Chapter 6, verse 75 or something.
71? Yeah. 71 we finished.
Yeah, exactly. So from verse 72. So on page 65, in this the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, we're on page 75. 65, sorry. Page 65, verse 72. Page 65. So this is the patience chapter, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. So it's one of the longer chapters. Probably because anger is one of the biggest obstacles in our spiritual practice. So again, let's just look. Verse 72. Why is a person condemned to death not fortunate if they are released after having their hand cut off? So what do you think? Someone who's been condemned to death, they've been convicted of, convicted of a crime, or for whatever reason they've been sentenced to death, so they're waiting on death row. In the U.S. they call death row, when you're in prison, in a special part of the prison, you're waiting to be executed because it takes, I don't know, it takes a long time these days. But then, they're released. They get released for whatever reason, but they have to have their hand cut off. Right? So are they fortunate? If someone's been convicted to death, they're supposed to be executed. Would they feel fortunate, I guess is more the question. They think they're going to be executed, but then instead they get released from prison, but they have their hand cut off. Do you think would you feel fortunate? You've been convicted to death, but then you're released with just your hand cut off instead?
I guess it's
What? Probably, yeah. If you really think you're going to be killed, but then you're not killed and instead you just have a hand cut off, you probably think, oh wow, I got off with a pretty good deal. Right? I think that's definitely what he's saying. Why is a person condemned to death not fortunate if they're released after having their hand cut off? Why am I, who am experiencing human misery, not fortunate if by that I am spared from the agonies of hell? So how is it, do you think that, so he's saying, even, this is one way to practice patience, thinking, because we get upset, or we get angry, because we look at how we feel unfortunate, that we have to experience so many problems. We have to experience, friends that betray us, or sickness, or, people who are rude to us, unkind to us, and so forth. So because of that, we feel unfortunate, right? And so we get upset, we get angry. But then he's saying, but why am I, so those are human miseries. Why am I, who am experiencing human misery, not fortunate if by that I am spared from the agonies of hell? So how is it that by experiencing difficulties as a human being in this life, that you're spared from the agonies of hell? You're spared from means you don't have to take rebirth. You don't have to experience hell. What do you think?
You're cutting all your previous bad karma.
Exactly. You're exhausting your karma. Because any unfortunate or miserable or painful or unpleasant experience we have is a result of our own negative karma, right? So in this life, as a human being, we experience many, unpleasant things. But it could be that, in many cases, it could be that by experiencing those sufferings as a human being, then they don't ripen as a rebirth in hell, right? In the future, when we die, then that karma already is being exhausted. Every time we're experiencing something unpleasant, we're experiencing the result of our negative karma, thereby that negative karma is exhausted, thereby it doesn't have the power to produce further unpleasant effects in the future. So he's saying, especially if you do purification practice, or especially if you practice Dharma in general, then it's said that one way of purifying is to experience the effects of very heavy negative karma as more minor sufferings, and thereby it becomes exhausted through the force of your purification practice, or your Dharma practice. So he's saying we should feel fortunate, actually, when we experience unpleasant things, misfortune, that we can think, oh, actually, but I'm purifying or exhausting the karma that would otherwise throw me into rebirth as an animal, as a hungry ghost, or as a hell being, or even as a human being in a future life in a much more difficult circumstances, in a much less fortunate circumstances than we have now. So we can, by thinking like that, we can kind of bear or practice patience or bear difficulty much more easily. Yeah.
It's also the opposite way. For example, if you are also opposite to suffering,
Yeah.
it's like if you are experiencing so much happiness, then we are also exhausting the good karma that might throw us in a higher rebirth in the next life.
Yeah, it's true. It does go like that. But then, see, even if we're to take rebirth, a higher rebirth next life, then it's not sure that would be a better circumstance for practicing Dharma. Because like if you take rebirth as a god of the desire realm, or a god of the form or formless realm, it said it's much more difficult to practice Dharma there, because you're not compelled to practice Dharma because you don't have many problems. So you don't feel any need to get out of samsara. You don't feel any urgency to get free from samsara yourself, and it's more difficult to generate compassion for others because you yourself don't have much problems or much suffering. So the best condition for practicing Dharma is where you have a good balance of intelligence and kind of freedom to think about things. But you also have some problems and some difficulty and suffering. Like you can see even in a very ordinary way among just, people that we know. Most people, not only related to Buddhism, but in terms of spiritual practice in general, people who become very strong, serious spiritual practitioners, it's usually because they have some very difficult experience in life. Either they almost die, or someone near them almost dies, or they're really troubled by anger or trauma or anxiety, or they have depression or something like that. Like even in my experience at CKSL, most of the new people who come to the center, mostly it's like either because they have a problem with anxiety, they have a lot of anger, or someone close to them died and it really startled them about like what is the purpose of life, what is the meaning of life kind of question. Most people who come to Dharma who are not born in like Buddhist kind of families, or even those who are, the ones who become really serious about spiritual practice, then it's because they have some severe kind of suffering that they feel like it kind of shakes them up and things makes them think, oh, I need to do something different in my life to help deal with this. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like that. But another way to think of this is like, because here, if you look back at the analogy is someone who's been sentenced to death. And then, so that's analogous to someone who's been destined to take rebirth in hell or a lower realm. But instead of being sentenced to death, they actually get free, but they have some much more minor suffering, like their hand being cut off, right? So it's kind of, a different way to read the verse would be like, we could think, well, I have so much negative, in my infinite past lives, countless past lives, I've created so much negative karma. Definitely, I've killed people and, murdered people and stolen and committed adultery and, with hatred, done all kinds of destructive things. So definitely I have the karma to take rebirth in hell, but somehow that didn't ripen this life, and I was able to take rebirth as a human being. So I've gotten off like really well. And then, but as a human being, I still have these sufferings, but compared to the suffering I would have experienced if my karma to throw me into rebirth in hell or much worse circumstances, compared to that, like I've gotten off really well. So then whatever I experience now is kind of okay. It's no big deal. You see? That's a different way to think about it. The first way I explained was thinking about what could happen in the future, but the different way to think about it is, well, what could have happened in the past that I wouldn't be in this fortunate circumstance that I'm in now. Right? So that's another, in general, thinking about our good fortune and having taken this rebirth that we have now. It helps to tolerate all kinds of difficulties that we face if we have an underlying sense of our good fortune. Right? Okay, then verse 73. If I am unable to endure even the mere suffering of the present as a human being, then why do I not restrain myself from being angry, which will be the source of hellish misery? So here he's saying, even in this human state, I feel it very difficult, to bear all the problems that one experiences in a normal human life. And if I get angry about it, then I'm creating the cause for even much more problems in the future, right? Because anger is such a destructive attitude. So if I generate the intention to harm others again and again, and I do harm others, I act out of anger and thereby harm others, then I'm creating the cause to receive harm, like much more harm than I experience now. And even because one of the main cause of rebirth in hell is, of course, hell is the most, it's the most kind of intense, severe, most painful sort of experience one can have, the most kind of suffering one can experience. So it's caused by the most intense negative emotions that we can experience, the most intense, destructive, afflictive emotions and actions that follow on those, mental or verbal or physical actions that follow from those. So, of course, anger, of all the destructive, afflictive emotions, anger is one of them, probably the most destructive. So he's saying, why, if I don't like the kind of suffering and problems I have now, then that all becomes a reason for not getting angry, right? Because if I don't restrain myself from being angry, then I'll experience the suffering of hell and many other problems in the future. So therefore I should restrain myself from being angry. that make sense? Seeing how destructive anger is karmically creates the causes for harm in the future, then we restrain ourselves from it now. So again, just to read it, if I am unable to endure even the mere sufferings of the present, then why do I not restrain myself from being angry, which will be the source of hellish misery in the future, right? So if I don't like suffering of the present, then I should stop creating the cause for suffering in the future. One of the main ones being anger. Then 74. For the sake of satisfying my desires, I have suffered numerous burnings in hell, but by those actions I neither fulfilled the purpose of myself nor others. So he's saying, for the sake of satisfying my desires, so having basically 8 worldly concerns, by having desire for power, desire for wealth, desire for fame, desire for physical gratification, all kinds of things, desire for just getting whatever we want. So for the sake of satisfying my desires, I have suffered numerous burnings in hell. Basically it means we've created lots and lots of negative karma in the past in order to get what we want. And as a result of that negative karma, many, many times in the past, we've taken rebirth in hell. We've experienced numerous burnings in hell. But through all of that, then by all those actions, I neither fulfilled the purpose of myself and others. So it means even despite all that, we still are stuck in samsara. It hasn't done us any good, really, because we still face all kinds of problems again and again. So like think, in the past maybe you've been, a powerful merchant or political leader or a king or queen or a warlord or something. So think of all the negative, destructive things you see people doing now. We've all done all of those in the past, in some past life, in some existence. And maybe we've been extremely successful. But if we've done so by means of harming others, by means of causing harm to others, directly or indirectly. I think now how so many people, they make a lot of wealth, but by, indirectly causing a lot of sickness for others. For example, in pharmaceutical companies, selling a lot of medicine, like in the US there's a whole opioid crisis now. I don't know if you heard of it. But where these pharmaceutical companies knowingly sell painkillers, which are highly addictive to people, and then thousands, if not millions of people get addicted to the painkillers, and then it kind of ruins their life. Like they can't stop, they cause themselves to have more illness, they spend tons of money, not to mention they get, it ruins their relationships, they can't work. It's like they spend, because they get addicted to the drug, then instead of spending all their time and energy in a productive way, they spend all their time and energy just trying to get more and more of the drug, and then many overdose. There's tons of overdoses and die at a very young age. So then, of course, the people selling the opioids, if the pharmaceutical companies and the stockholders and the people who control the company, if they're knowingly doing that, then it's incredible negative karma. I mean, their objective is just wealth, to create more wealth for themselves. Like there's this famous family, the Sackler family. They've been in the news lately. They're the owners of one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies that's been selling opioids. And it shows in memos and emails that they know that the drug is highly addictive, but yet they downplay that and deny that, and then they encourage doctors to sell more and more of that prescription painkiller at the highest dose, even though it's not needed. And then thousands of people get addicted. So then the karma they create is very heavy karma now. Because they're a cause for all the thousands of people who suffer as a result of being addicted to those drugs, including dying. Then that karma is going to ripen on the people who are causing that, right? So this is a perfect example of like a desire for satisfying desires. So desire for wealth. Why do you want wealth? Because you want to be able to buy a big house, go for vacation, go buy a yacht or whatever, eat whatever food you want, or have control of people. So for verse 74, so for the sake of satisfying desires, I have suffered numerous burnings in hell. So for the sake of satisfying our desires, we cause other people to suffer, we don't care about it. Then we create negative karma. Then when we die, the negative karma ripens, we take rebirth in hell, right? But those actions, But by those actions, I neither fulfill the purpose of myself and other. So again and again, we chase after desires, we harm others, not caring about it, we create negative karma, we take rebirth in hell, the karma to experience hell becomes exhausted. Again, we take rebirth as a human being or some other kind of an upper realm. Again, we chase after our desires out of habit. Again, we create negative karma. So it's just a cycle, goes around again and again and again with no benefit, no long-term benefit. So by those actions, I neither fulfill the purpose of myself, our purpose being lasting happiness, stable, reliable, lasting well-being and happiness. I neither fulfill the purpose of myself or others, right? So he's saying that because our attachment to getting what we want, getting our desires, is one of the main causes, is probably the main cause of getting angry, right? So seeing how fruitless following that just blindly following our desires and our attachment is, helps reduce anger. So then verse 75, yet now, since great meaning will accrue from harm which is not even a fraction of the harm of hell, I should indeed be solely joyful towards such suffering that dispels the harms of all, right? So now, instead of getting, when others harm us, instead of getting angry, seeing that harm is done to us as a result of our negative karma, and that is exhausting the results of our negative karma, and that seeing that by recognizing how this whole cycle works of being attached to fame, wealth, power, physical gratification, and so forth, and then chasing after that, harming others, that whole cycle I just described. So seeing that we have to break that cycle. How? So that when we experience harm, instead of getting angry about it and retaliating, patiently, being patient, not getting angry about it, it becomes very meaningful. So it says, verse 75, yet now, since great meaning will accrue from harm which is not even a fraction of that. So now as a human being, I don't have to experience all the harm, all the pain and misery and discomfort of being an animal or being a hungry ghost or being a hell being. So compared to that, if I only have to bear the small suffering of being a human being. But if I do that with patience, from harm which is not even a fraction of that, I should indeed be solely joyful towards such suffering that dispels the harms of all. So if I can bear the suffering of being a human being with patience, then we cultivate this positive attitude of patience, right? And it becomes extremely meaningful. It leads us to liberation and enlightenment. So I should indeed be solely joyful towards such sufferings that dispel the harms of all. So how is it that the small sufferings we experience as a human being dispel the harms of all? Well, one, because as a human being we can learn about why we experience happiness and why we experience suffering. So the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, and how karma arises through the force of afflictive emotions. How afflictive emotions arise from ignorance, and that the antidote to ignorance is wisdom, realizing emptiness. Antidote to anger is loving kindness and patience. Antidote to attachment is contentment, having few desires, and so forth. So by patiently bearing the hardship that we have as a human being, and not reacting with anger, then gradually that dispels the harms of that. Gradually it frees us from samsara in general, and brings us to enlightenment. And then by the force of knowing the path through our own experience, knowing the path to liberation and enlightenment, then we can teach others and help others achieve liberation and enlightenment. So it's like this very small step we take of patiently bearing the harm, bearing whatever difficulty we have. That's one small step towards all sentient beings being free from suffering, right? That's what it's saying. It's connecting this very small instance of just patiently bearing harm at the hands of others or at the hands of our karma. Patiently bearing that, then if we practice patience in that case, and instead of getting angry and getting upset and getting resentful, it's like whenever we're harmed by someone or we experience some hardship, we can react in two ways. We can become very resentful and upset about it, which is just leading us back into samsara, or we can just practice patience and use wisdom to think about why is this happening to me and how can I eventually be free from this kind of experience, which leads us in the direction of liberation, leads us, and not only us, leads us and all sentient beings in the direction of liberation and enlightenment. So at any time we experience hardship, we've got a choice, between two different ways of reacting. One leads us and all sentient beings into more suffering, and one leads us and all sentient beings into freedom from suffering. Right? That's kind of what he's talking about. So let's just read 75 again. Yet now, since great meaning will accrue from harm which is not even a fraction of that of hell, I should indeed be solely joyful towards such suffering that dispels the harm of all. So thinking in that way, that this harm I'm experiencing gives me an opportunity then to practice patience and thereby to be closer to freedom from samsara, liberation from samsara. And then 76. Should someone else find joyous happiness in praising my enemy? So from 76 down, there's quite a few verses about how to deal with the situation of other people praising our enemies. So here, enemy means like people we dislike, people we're prone to become angry with, people that we detest or we think are just bad people. That's what we're talking about, enemies. So when other people praise those people, or when the people that we dislike, when they have happiness, and instead, how do we react to that? So 76. So should someone else find joyous happiness in praising my enemy as an excellent person, why, mind, do you not praise them too, and likewise make yourself happy? So this is saying, So again, we have an enemy, someone we dislike, someone we think is kind of a bad person, who we have a very poor opinion of. And then we see someone else praising that person. Usually we feel we get a little irritated. We don't like that, right? We feel irritated by that. And might get angry at the person praising that person. So why mind? So he's talking to himself, talking to his own mind. Why mind? So this is actually kind of helpful for us to learn how to give ourselves advice. Why mind, my mind, do you not praise them too? And likewise make yourself happy. So someone else can praise this person and feel very happy. We also want happiness. So why don't we also praise that person and likewise experience happiness?
But that would be untruthful, isn't it?
Well, in general, yes. Yeah. So I mentioned, because I also had this doubt, but I don't like that person. That person they're doing a lot of bad things. So why would I praise the person?
I think it means praising the good qualities of your enemy. It's not that your enemy will be entirely
Right. Yeah, that's the conclusion I also came to. I think you have to look, because anyone has some good qualities, right? I mean, I think. I have to check. But there's something, if you look for the positive in someone, or at least even if they don't have manifest positive qualities, they have the potential to be good. Right? Everybody has the potential to be good. That you can't question. So here, maybe someone, because I was thinking about Trump, President Trump. I really don't like. But he has supporters who are fanatically love him. No, his supporters, they fanatically praise him. Like for anything he does, they praise. So I was thinking so Shantideva is saying those people, they feel so happy, which is true. They feel so happy praising Trump. They really love. All the more crazy things he does, the more happy they are. So then Shantideva is kind of saying to me, why can't you be happy praising him? If you praise him similarly, you also would feel happy. And I was like, no way, how can I possibly do that? He's such a totally deluded, terrible kind of leader, a bad example, and such a bad influence on the whole world. How can I possibly praise him? But then I came to the same conclusion as Wangdu, but you can find, I can find some good things about him, some good things that he does. And so if I want to praise him, I could praise him for those things. There are some things he does that I think, oh, that's pretty smart. That's
good looking.
He's a good comedian.
He communicates well with his audience. I don't want to get into politics here in the talk, but...
And poor fellow, he gets a lot of negative publicity. I think people pick on him a lot.
Yeah, well, but that's not a reason to praise him, right? We're looking for some positive quality that he has. Maybe he patiently endures a lot of criticism or something. Yeah, Abhan?
That's a perfect example, and this is what happens a lot of time.
Yeah.
you know, the people who are praising somebody who is not really a very nice kind of a person, inherently a nice kind of a person, because they've got something to gain out of him. They're getting some work done of their own out of him.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
this is what's happening in my neighborhood.
Okay. Yeah.
So the fact that that person is absolutely, you know, I mean, nothing is absolute, but he's really got more poor qualities than good qualities.
Yeah.
But the people who are pro him are getting a lot of their work done out of him.
Yeah, yeah. They're getting some
by bribing
miles
them.
out of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of bribing going on, and so he looks after them.
Right,
You know,
right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary that you can't resent anybody, because he's not doing, that person is not doing things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And the people who are protecting him or praising him are not praising him for the right reasons either.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely not the case that we can't say that people do bad things or people do wrong things and you can dislike that, or you can think that that's wrong. That I don't think we're saying, but I think he's saying, you know, you shouldn't, well, basically, you can look for the positive qualities in anybody, right? You can try to find the positive side of someone, but it doesn't mean you have to exclusively focus on that, because that would also be another distortion, right? A big distortion in many cases. But I think it means you shouldn't totally lose sight of that, because that just makes you miserable. Like you can see, if we have there's two extremes. One, which are both a kind of distortion and a kind of ignorance, right? One is the extreme of just thinking everything is okay and everything is all right and there's no problems, and any problems there are, it's just an illusion, and this kind of unrealistic fantasy over like positive way of looking at things. And then there's the other side of just being total pessimist and just thinking, you know, the world is just full of problems, everyone is bad, you can't trust everyone, you can't trust anyone, and everything is terrible. But so I think we have to find kind of a middle ground that's more realistic, where we see both the good and the bad. But I think in this case, he's kind of saying, because with our enemies, people we dislike, we tend to just have a blanket disapproval of everything about them, right?
Discard them completely.
Yeah, discard them completely, despise them completely. I mean, that's one of the factors of anger, is that you focus exclusively, when you're angry at a person, you focus exclusively on negative things you see about them. And then you get very disturbed by that and you want to harm them, use that as an excuse to harm them. And you can't see, you know, other positive things about them. Like, it's helpful to think about when other people are angry at us, and that's, when we're the object of other people's anger, it's much more easy to see how distorted a person's opinion becomes, right? When we're angry at another person, it's much more difficult, because we're in the distortion of our anger. It's much more difficult to think in an objective way. But I think that's what he's pointing to here, is that, you know, because he's talking about the situation when other people are praising someone that we dislike, and then we get angry about it. So we have to find a way to understand, well, what's going on? Why are they praising that person? So your way of explaining it is one way, thinking, well, they want something, and they know that if they praise that person, they're going to get what they want. So that's why they're doing it. So that's a kind of wisdom, understanding how that works, and that kind of wisdom can help us have compassion for both parties, rather than just getting angry and seeing, oh, the poor thing, they need, you know, the people in my neighborhood, they need, you know, they need to make a living, they need to make some profit, and the only way they can do it is by kowtowing to this person, so that's why they're doing it. It's not that they really 100%, you know, agree with everything that person says. Yeah. So, yeah, something like that. We need to not make a total blanket judgment about the object of our anger, but try to see the positive side of the person too. So let's just read 77 to check if we seem to be on track. That joyous happiness of yours, 76. Should someone else find joyous happiness in praising my enemy as an excellent person, why, mind, do you not praise them too, and likewise make yourself happy? Let's look at 77 also. That joyous happiness of yours would be a source of joy, not something prohibited. A precept given by the excellent ones. and a supreme means for assembling others. Okay. And a supreme means for assembling others. That's interesting, isn't it? That joyous happiness of yours. So if you praised your enemy, and then you really had some happiness from that. You praise not the whole thing, but maybe something about the enemy, the person you dislike, and you really had some happiness. That would be a source of joy, not something prohibited. So that would be something that you can really be satisfied about. And it would be following the advice of the excellent one, means the Buddha, a precept given by the excellent ones, the Buddhas. And the supreme means for assembling others. That's very important, I think, that last line. Because if I think about my example with President Trump in the US and his supporters, if I only see and talk about negative things about him, then I have no way to make any connection with people who support Trump, right? So then I have no doorway to try to change the way they think about what he's doing. Whereas if I can find something positive about, like, President Trump, and then I have some basis to talk about people who really wholeheartedly support him, because they can see that I can see something positive about him. So then there's some grounds to start talking and communicating. And then through starting having communication, then gradually you have an entryway to maybe change the way they think about what he's doing. So that's a big example, but you can look at more personal examples, like in your family or in your office place, in your workplace, in more, first-hand relationships you have with people in your life. That if there's someone in your family that you dislike, and when you talk with other people in your family about that person, you only criticize, you only talk about negative things that you don't like about that person, then it totally cuts you off. It creates big divisions in the family, like cliques, where some people are kind of aligned with that person and some people align with me. Whereas even generally, you don't like the person, you think mostly they're a bad person for whatever reason. But if you can find something positive to say about them, and then when you talk with other people or talk with them, you talk about the positive you see in them, then it creates some kind of connection where you can improve the relationship, with them or with other people in your family. So that's why, and a supreme means for assembling others, right? So basically look at slander. In the 10 non-virtues, the second non-virtue, the first non-virtue of speech is lying, it's the heaviest. The second, what is slander or harsh speech, the second one? Anyway, the second or third is slander. So slander is when we talk about the negative, talk about the faults or...
I guess slander is heavier than harsh speech.
I think slander is heavier, so it should be second probably. Yeah. So slander is speaking about others in a way that causes division, destroys harmony, and causes division, right? So this is also relating to that. So rather than that, if we talk about the positive qualities we see in others, then it creates more harmony. But of course, there are problems that need to be addressed. Like there's good reason to talk about, if a politician like Trump or some other politician or someone's doing something that's really harmful and destructive and bad. Of course, we can't just push that under the carpet and ignore that, because then it just becomes more and more of a problem, becomes more and more destructive. So, but again, we have to divide the person's actions from the actual person. Have sincere wish to benefit the person, no wish to harm the person, but see that certain actions are destructive, and so therefore they need to be stopped. They need to be addressed. Right? Okay, let's look at. Let's try to get through 10 verses, and then we'll do some meditation or stop for a break. So let's try to get up to 82. So look at verse 78. It is said that others are made happy through being praised in this way. If in this way you do not want to make them have this happiness, then since it makes them happy, you should cease giving wages and the like to your servants. However, you would be adversely affected, both in this and future lives. So basically it's saying that, it's helpful for us to want to care about and be concerned about the happiness of others, right? So we should if we have a mind of loving kindness, wishing for the welfare of others, wishing for the happiness of others around us, is something that is a quality we need to develop, but it's something that we ourselves need. We need support and loving kindness from others. And others, people around us, in our family or in our workplace or in our neighborhood, whoever we relate to, they when we have an attitude which sincerely wishes to benefit them, we sincerely care about others, that benefits them, right? And them receiving benefit from us, it benefits us indirectly, right? If he gives an example here of, if we have people working for us, because we want them, well, one, because we want them to keep working for us, but one, because we want to accomplish their welfare. If we accomplish, if there's people working for us, if we accomplish their welfare by paying them wages, then they'll do the work we want, right? If we stop caring about what they want or need, and so we stop paying their wages, then are they going to keep working for us? No, of course not. They'll go work for someone else. So us being concerned about actually others, indirectly it benefits us, right? If we stop being concerned about others whatsoever, then we're harming ourselves, actually. That's what he's saying. So, read from the beginning of the verse. It is said that others are made happy through being praised in this way. So when my enemies are praised, it makes them happy. If in this way, you do not want them to have happiness. So if we're angry at them because of that, or angry at others because they're praising our enemy, or angry at our enemies because they're receiving so much praise, and therefore we want them to not be happy. If in this way you do not want them to have this happiness, so if we don't want them to have happiness, so then in general, if we decide we don't want others to have happiness, so he's saying the same reason you apply to the one person, you should apply to all, right? If you think you don't want this person to have happiness, then you should give up caring about the happiness of anyone else, right? Then, since it makes them happy, and that's something you don't care about, you don't want people to have, you should cease giving wages and the like to your servants. So if you have servants or people work for you, or whatever, then because you don't want them to be happy, you should stop paying them wages and so forth. However, you would be adversely affected both in this and future lives. If you were to do that, it's going to have negative repercussions for you. In this life, they stop working for you, they stop having anything to do with you. And in future lives, of course, you also, that karma ripens upon you. Right? So you find yourself in a similar situation where you're working for someone but they don't pay you. And other people just want you to not be happy. So it's another karmic effect of just anger, is that anger is the very opposite. Being angry at someone is the wish to harm, basically. The wish to harm is the very opposite of the wish to help. Right? The wish to help others is love. Right? So anger and love are totally opposite. They're diametric opposites. So if we cultivate the wish to harm others, anger towards others, then it means in the future we become the object of that attitude. We become the object of anger. So we have we find ourselves, the karmic result of that is we find ourselves in a situation where we're surrounded by people who detest us. We're surrounded by people who want to harm us, which is a miserable situation to be in, right? So that's basically what he's getting at there. Okay, let's look at 79. When people describe my own good qualities, I want others to be happy. Oh yeah. But when they describe the good qualities of others, I do not wish to be happy myself. So he's kind of saying this is the crazy way of thinking. If you're envious or jealous, or if you get angry when someone praises an enemy, you think in this totally rooted way. So he's contrasting these two situations. In the first two lines, so think about it. When people describe my own good qualities, so think about when someone's praised you, someone's described your qualities. Right? How do you feel? Feel happy, right? If someone's praising us a lot. So we've all been in a situation where, maybe you got a promotion or whatever, you gave someone a big gift, or when you graduated from college, or you got newly married, something like that. So people praise you a lot, right? So that time you feel happy, right? You feel kind of on the top of the world. So when people describe my own good qualities, they praise me, then I want others to be happy. So in that moment, when other people are praising you a lot, describing your good qualities, kind of singing your praises to the world, it's easy to want others to be happy, right? Because you kind of feel on a high. So then it's very easy to have the intention that others be happy, to return the kindness of praise. But, so then the opposite. But when they describe the good qualities of others, So now when people, still they're praising, but they're not directing the praise at you, they're directing the praise at others, and especially someone you dislike, right? But when they describe the good qualities of others whom I dislike, my enemies, then I do not wish to be happy myself. So at that time, if I get angry, then it's like I don't even wish to be happy for myself, not to mention I can't care about the happiness of others, right? So how foolish is that? It's just, you can see how if we get angry or resentful, when someone praises someone we don't like, we destroy our own happiness. Not only we can't contribute to the happiness of others around us, but we ourselves can't even be happy. It's like we don't even wish for ourselves to be happy. We destroy our own happiness. Like that. Then verse 80, having generated the awakening mind. So now we bring in the attitude of bodhicitta. This is what the awakening mind means, bodhicitta. The aspiration that in order to free all sentient beings from suffering and lead them to perfect happiness, then we ourselves become enlightened. We must become a fully enlightened being. Right? So this aspiration. So the whole book is based on generating bodhicitta, right? In the first 2 chapters, it's all about generating bodhicitta. So Shantideva is assuming you're someone who has the aspiration to become fully enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings. So then in the context of that attitude, of course anger looks completely ridiculous, right? So look, having generated the awakening mind, through wishing all beings to be happy, why should I become angry if they find some happiness themselves? Right? So I have an enemy, then other people are praising the enemy, then that person feels very happy. And if I have bodhicitta, I want that person to have long-term happiness. Right? That's the whole purpose of my wish to become fully enlightened, is to bring happiness to that person. So if that person finds some short-term if that person has some short-term happiness, then why do I get upset about it if my whole aim is their long-term happiness? So why should I become angry if they find some happiness themselves? So of course there are some details to work out here. It's not 100% clear. Like, you know, if that, how do I say? Well, again, like in the case of President Trump, like if a lot of people praise him and vote for him, and then he does like a lot more destructive things, actually, okay, maybe he feels happy. Should I really be happy? But should I really be happy about that? I mean, I guess he can be happy, but if that leads him to do, like, destroy the happiness of many other people, right? Then it's because you have to think in many different levels. Okay, maybe the basic, I want him to be happy, so just him being happy is fine. But then if that's going to lead him into destroying, I mean, like destroying the Paris Climate Accord, which is going to lead to massive global warming, or destroying the nuclear arms treaty with Russia, which could lead to a whole new arms race, or destroying our trade tax with China, which could destroy the whole economy. So there's so much destruction that could happen if the person just gets what they want. So I don't think it means, we want to interpret it to meaning it doesn't mean that everybody just gets what they want, but rather if we really want the happiness of someone, then we shouldn't generate resentment when they have some small happiness. Basically like that.
Venerable?
Yeah.
What's the difference between happiness and being pleased?
What's the difference?
There is a difference. There is a difference. So
Yeah.
because Trump is pleased with his supporters and and the fame that he gets and stuff, it doesn't mean that he's happy.
Well, that's true, yeah. I mean, yeah, happiness has many different flavors, right?
This is talking about being pleased.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, you could interpret, you definitely could interpret like that. Well, why should I be angry? But I mean, happiness, see, I'm thinking happiness here is just a very broad term, which can mean very deep, real, like lasting happiness, satisfaction, which pleased is just pleased is not that. But I think he's also talking about just short-term pleasure. Is it because that's a kind of happiness. It's not like real deep satisfaction. It's just kind of short-term pleasure, satisfaction.
So even that's good enough?
Well, that's not that. I think even that. I think is saying like we shouldn't generate resentment even just people have small pleasures, even though it might lead them into a longer-term suffering. Then we shouldn't resent them for just experiencing some kind of pleasure. But yeah, there's things, I think he'll probably modify it below. Let's look at the next couple verses and then stop. 81. If I wish for all sentient beings to become Buddhas worshipped throughout the three realms, then why am I tormented when I see them receiving merely mundane respect? Yeah, so see, it talks about even this mundane kind of pleasure, mundane respect. If I wish for all sentient beings to become Buddhas worshipped throughout the three realms, then why am I tormented when I see them receiving merely mundane respect? Well, there's a way to answer that, though, that totally disagrees. Because if someone receives merely mundane respect, it could just inflate their ego, right? And kind of encourage them in going in like totally wrong direction, to act in a totally destructive way. So it seems like, yeah, there are cases where we shouldn't. Well, but why be tormented? Why am I tormented when I see them receiving merely mundane respect? I mean, the whole point here is not to be angry about something, because anger, wishing to harm them as a result of that, it's not going to help. It doesn't help you achieve your aims, also, right? So, I think it's possible to see how it's not good if people have a destructive sense of being satisfied by receiving mundane respect, but not also for ourselves, not to be tormented by that, right? Not to be totally upset and angered by that, but rather just think it's just kind of a foolish thing, destructive thing. So if I wish for all sentient beings to become Buddhas worshipped throughout the three realms, then why am I tormented when I see them receiving merely mundane respect? So the main thing again is not to become angry about it. Then 82, if a relative for whom I am caring and to whom I must give many things should be able to find their own livelihood, wouldn't I be happy rather than angry? I think this is paired with 83. If I do not wish for beings to have even this, how can I wish for them to awaken? And where is there an awakening mind in one who becomes angry when others receive things? Okay, so let's look at 82 again. If a relative for whom I am caring, so I'm caring for a sick relative, right? And to whom I must give many things, and I have to do so at great cost to myself, right? So I have to give them time, I have to give them energy, I have to spend money on their housing, their food, their medical care. So if a relative for whom I am caring, and to whom I must give many things, so in many ways I have to exert myself, put out expense to care for the sick relative. So if that relative should be able to find their own livelihood and stop depending upon me, wouldn't I be happy rather than angry? Okay, so that's the example. Everyone got the example? Okay. So how is it going to relate to anger? I think it's going to say something like, so without reading 83, something like, basically, so the sick relative is like the person who doesn't have happiness, but they need happiness. And when I'm caring for them, it's like I am responsible. It's like at cost to myself, at a burden to myself, I have to do everything to bring them happiness and satisfy them. So if they find their own livelihood, they find a different source of well-being and happiness apart from me, I'd be happy, shouldn't I be happy about it rather than angry about it? So similarly, this person who I don't like, my enemy, because I have generated the attitude of bodhicitta, I've taken on personal responsibility to provide for their happiness, to bring about their welfare. That's part of the bodhisattva vow. I have to work for the welfare of all sentient beings, irregardless of, whether I like them or dislike them, irregardless of how they treat me, irregardless of whether they engage in virtuous or non-virtuous actions. I have to care about and work for and achieve the welfare of all sentient beings. So then if they find some source of well-being and happiness apart from me that I don't have to do anything for them to achieve, shouldn't I be happy about it rather than angry about it? So let's look at, is that what he's saying in 83? If I do not wish for beings even to have this, so instead, if I don't even wish for beings to have some mundane well-being and happiness, how can I wish for them to awaken, right? So if I have this bodhicitta attitude, and I see that apart from totally independent of my actions, a person whom I dislike or whom I disapprove of, if they have some happiness, some mundane well-being and happiness and respect, But then I dislike that. I get angry about that. So then if I do not have the wish for beings to have even this mundane respect, this mundane happiness, then how can I wish for them to awaken? So then my attitude of bodhicitta is just a joke, right? It's totally meaningless if I don't even wish for them to have that mundane well-being. And where is there an awakening mind? So like that. And where is there an awakening mind? And one who becomes angry when others receive things. So when others receive praise, or receive success, or receive satisfaction. And if we get angry about that, then where is there an awakening mind in that? Right? Okay, so that's, any questions about any of those things so far? Or you can save the question until after the break too. We'll have a break. Why don't we take a break now, I guess? We'll have a break, and then if you have questions, and then we can do some meditation afterwards. There's a lot of questions here, actually. I mean, this is there's a lot of kind of controversial things here. A lot of things we have to, because, I mean, oftentimes real-life situations are much more complex than the way it's sort of presented here. But it's important to try to look at, well, what are the main principles he's trying to express, and try to distill those, and separate those from instances where, we actually have to deal with people who are doing destructive things, and how to look at that, right, without ourselves falling into a destructive way of reacting to it, basically. Yeah. Okay, but Sadhana wants to offer us snacks and tea now, so.